The Anomaly, Tensura X Data Live, by Nocturne_Chapter 28. Inked in Chaos. Shidu paused after the strange first interaction with the gray-haired girl. Shidu and Rimuru found themselves helping her. She had collapsed in an alleyway from starvation, leaving them no choice. Shidu now carried the girl on his back while they continued their grocery shopping, Rimuru walking beside them, her gaze distant as if lost in thought. Rimuru seemed to know something about this girl, but as usual, she chose not to say anything just yet. Shidu glanced at her, noticing her silence but deciding not to press. "I'm sorry about this, Shonen," the girl muttered in a tired voice. "It's fine. More importantly, are you sure you're okay? Shouldn't we take you to a hospital?" Shidu asked, his concern clear. "Oh, it's fine, it's fine. I'm not sick or anything," the girl waved off his worry. "And you don't have to be so formal with me, I don't like formalities." Her stomach growled loudly again, causing Shidu to wince slightly. Despite her casual demeanor, the situation was more uncomfortable for him than he'd let on. "Is that so?" Shidu replied, trying to keep a neutral expression. "See, there you go again. Speaking of." The girl's voice took on a teasing tone as she leaned into him, pressing her breasts against his back. Shidu's face immediately flushed with embarrassment. "As a thank you, I've been pressing them right on you, but you're not reacting at all. Not even a little flustered, huh?" she said, a smirk creeping onto her face. "Maybe you're more into the booties?" she teased further, wiggling her hips slightly. Rimuru, walking quietly beside them, raised an eyebrow. "Why can't I still get used to this sort of thing?" she wondered to herself, a faint feeling of disgust rising within her. This wasn't her usual reaction, and she found it strange that she hadn't completely tuned it out by now. "What are you talking about?" Shidu exclaimed, his voice desperate. "Rimuru, don't just stand there." Rimuru glanced at him, her expression deadpan but clearly hiding her amusement. She sighed inwardly, knowing full well what Shidu was silently asking for help. But watching him squirm was far too entertaining. Still, she gave the girl a pointed look. "Hee hee. Shonen, do young men these days really just love big breasts?" the girl asked, clearly enjoying herself. "I mean, you don't even call them boobs if they're smaller than 80 centimeters, right?" "Sorry, I can't do anything about that," she continued, her teasing relentless. "Can you please stop putting me into weird categories?" Shidu begged, his voice strained. At that moment, the girl looked ahead and pointed to a building. "Oh, this is my apartment," she said with a grin, finally letting them off the hook. As they approached the entrance, Rimuru couldn't help but shake her head slightly. After the three of them entered the apartment, the girl quickly settled in, changing into more casual clothes. She leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms with a satisfied sigh, letting out all the built-up exhaustion from earlier. "Thanks a lot, Shonen," the girl said, her voice carrying a note of relief. As Shidu and Rimuru glanced around the room, they quickly realized that it wasn't just any ordinary apartment, it was a mangaka studio. Piles of papers, sketchbooks, and art supplies were scattered across the desks. "Are you a manga artist?" Shidu asked, surprise evident in his voice. "Yeah, I am. I got so caught up in work that I forgot to eat," the girl replied casually. "I thought I'd head out to grab something from the convenience store, but as soon as I stepped outside," she trailed off, her tone turning exaggerated. "I realized that the Earth's gravitational pull is unexpectedly strong." Rimuru raised an eyebrow at the odd statement, while Shidu looked around at the scattered papers, picking up one of them. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized the drawing style. Could this be Silver Bullet?" Shidu asked, his voice rising with disbelief. Rimuru tilted her head, confused. "Is that something famous, Shido?" Before he could answer, the girl interrupted with a proud grin. "That's right, I'm surprised you know about it, Shonen. Are you one of my readers?" "Thanks," she said, clearly pleased. Shidu's jaw nearly dropped. "Wait a minute, does that mean you're the author, Honjo Shoji?" "Yeah, that's right," the girl replied nonchalantly, leaning back into her chair. "But, you're not a guy?" Shidu asked, his confusion deepening. "Oh, that's just my pen name. My real name's Nia. Honjo Nia. There are quite a few women who use male pen names to write shonen manga," she explained. "Like Takajo-san, who writes, Other fake. Rimuru crossed her arms, watching Shizu's reaction with mild amusement as his face lit up with even more shock. Takajo Hiroki too? No way. But Silver Bullet has been running since I was in elementary school. Shizu exclaimed, clearly struggling to process the information. Then it went on hiatus for 5 years due to the author's poor health. Nia nodded. It's been 10 years since my debut. I had to take a break for a while because of various reasons. But I recently made my comeback. Be sure to check out this week's issue. I'm resuming the series. Shizu looked even more bewildered. 10 years? But you only look like you're about 20. He was abruptly cut off by the loud grumble of Nia's stomach again, drawing both his and Rimuru's attention. Shonen. Nia clung to him, her voice weak with desperation. Food, please. Shizu sighed, looking resigned. Alright, I'll be borrowing your kitchen then. As Shizu reluctantly headed into the kitchen, leaving the two girls alone, Rimuru's demeanor shifted. Her usually playful expression faded, replaced by a serious look as she observed Nia. Rimuru watched Nia quietly as she lounged in her chair, her exhaustion seeming to lift now that she was inside and resting. But something about this entire situation didn't sit right with Rimuru. Meeting Honjo Nia like this couldn't be just a random coincidence, she was a spirit. It was almost as if everything had been orchestrated, planned out from the beginning. Why would a spirit like her just happen to collapse in front of us? Rimuru thought, her eyes narrowing slightly. There's something more going on here. But Rimuru's thoughts soon drifted elsewhere, particularly to Shizu and the way he had been interacting with girls lately. More specifically, the way she reacted to it. Normally, Rimuru wouldn't care. She'd been around Shizu long enough to be used to his flustered moments, especially when he was surrounded by girls. Especially after he kissed and sealed the inversed origami in the other world. Rimuru was disgusted from it for some apparent reason. But recently, it had been bothering her. Every time Shizu got even remotely close to someone in a lovey-dovey way, she'd feel this unfamiliar sense of disgust rise within her. Why am I getting disgusted by it? Rimuru mused. I should have been used to this by now. It's not like this is new. Her brow furrowed as she pondered the change in her demeanor. Something wasn't adding up. That's when it hit her. Seal. Rimuru's thoughts sharpened as she focused inward, summoning the ever-present entity within her mind. Seal, did you do something to my body again? A brief silence followed, as if Seal was momentarily caught off guard by the question. Then, the smooth, calculated voice of her inner companion responded. I would never do anything to your body without reason, Rimuru-sama. Rimuru's eyes narrowed further. Seal, don't play games with me. I know something's been off. What did you do? Seal hesitated, her tone almost too innocent. I may have made a few adjustments. Adjustments? Rimuru's suspicions deepened. What kind of adjustments? Just minor tweaks to your emotional responses, Seal answered, her voice light and airy. To ensure optimal performance in certain situations. Rimuru let out a sigh, already feeling the frustration building. You modified my body again, didn't you? It wasn't the first time Seal had taken such liberties, like how she turned Rimuru's body into a girl, but this time it was more personal. Only to improve your mental well-being, I assure you, Seal added quickly. I thought you'd appreciate it, Rimuru-sama. No, I don't appreciate it. Revert everything back to normal, Rimuru demanded, her tone firm. There was a brief pause before Ciel's reluctant voice responded. Understood. Rimuru felt a subtle shift within her, the discomfort she'd been feeling gradually fading. You're not getting away with this anymore, Ciel, Rimuru thought, though a small smile tugged at her lips. Even when her partner acted out of line, Rimuru couldn't deny the bond they shared. Still, some things just couldn't be tampered with without permission. As her thoughts cleared, Rimuru glanced at Nia again, her curiosity about the spirit reigniting. I'll figure out what's going on with you soon enough, she thought. Rimuru stepped closer to Nia, her sharp gaze piercing through the silence between them. Her voice, calm but filled with purpose, broke the tension. Honjo Nia-san, she said, her tone laced with an unspoken seriousness. Nia blinked in response, as if she hadn't expected Rimuru to call out to her so suddenly. What is it? She asked, her usual carefree demeanor intact. Rimuru's expression hardened slightly, There was no point in dancing around the issue any longer. Who are you really? No, let me get straight to the point. You're a spirit, aren't you? For a brief moment, Nia's eyes widened, taken aback by the directness of Rimuru's accusation. But instead of denying it or acting surprised for long, a soft chuckle escaped her lips. Her initial shock quickly gave way to a knowing smile. My. Rimuru-san, you're sharp, aren't you? Nia said with a playful tone. I figured you'd catch on quickly. You're as clever and cunning as it told me. Rimuru's brows furrowed slightly. It told you? Someone or something informed you about me? Nia simply shrugged, her smile growing wider. Maybe, but that's not really the point right now, is it? There was a teasing glint in her eyes, as if she enjoyed keeping Rimuru on edge. But to Rimuru's surprise, Nia didn't try to hide the truth any further. Instead, she let out a sigh and casually revealed what Rimuru had already suspected. All right, you got me. Yes, I'm a spirit. Without waiting for a response, Nia's form shifted in an instant. Yod. Her ordinary clothes melted away into an ethereal astral dress, her body now adorned in ink-colored, semi-transparent fabric that showcased her slender figure. The design of the dress reflected her unique profession as a manga artist, with pen-tip collars and manga panel patterns decorating the middle of her attire. It gave her a mystical, yet creative presence. Rimuru watched silently as Nia fully embraced her spirit form, noting how effortlessly she transitioned. There was no hesitation in her actions, as if revealing her true self was as natural as breathing. Nia glanced at Rimuru with a smile, but her gaze soon turned toward Shidu, who remained oblivious to the conversation unfolding between them. You know, I already know what you're trying to do. Itsuka Shido. Your mission to save spirits, your noble little goal. She said this with a playful lilt in her voice, almost as if amused by Shidu's efforts. Rimuru's eyes narrowed slightly. You already know about Shido's mission? Nia nodded, seemingly unbothered by the gravity of what she was saying. Oh, of course. Thanks to my angel, Raziel, I can access almost any information I want. It's like a super search engine, granting me all the knowledge I need, so naturally, I know all about Shido and what he's trying to do. As if on cue, Nia's angel, Raziel, manifested in her hand in the form of a book, its cover gleaming with a faint, otherworldly glow. While Rimuru remained composed, inwardly she was impressed by the power Nia wielded. As Shidu remained occupied, still cooking in the distance, oblivious to the confrontation that had just occurred, Rimuru couldn't help but feel a growing sense of curiosity about what would happen next. Meanwhile, Shidu, who's in the kitchen making a meal for Nia, was blissfully unaware of the tense conversation happening just behind him. As Rimuru watched Nia, still processing the sudden reveal, she called out to Seal in her mind. Seal, explain to me what that angel, Raziel, is exactly, Rimuru asked, her voice serious as her gaze remained fixed on Nia. Seal's voice answered calmly, as always. Raziel is an angel that takes the form of a book. It grants its user near omniscient knowledge of anything that has ever happened in the world, no matter where or when. It's akin to a super powerful search engine. The user simply has to consciously focus on the information they're looking for before arriving at an answer. Rimuru's brow furrowed in thought. That's quite the ability. Seal continued, explaining further. However, Raziel has limitations. It can't detect danger coming toward the user, and it can't provide information about future events or someone's inner thoughts. Additionally, the angel is only capable of providing factual information. It can't offer subjective advice or tell Nia what she should do in uncertain situations. Rimuru nodded, understanding more about the book's power, but something still gnawed at her. So, it's not perfect, then. But if Nia wanted to, she could learn a lot about me. Ciel's tone remained confident. There's no need to worry, Rimuru-sama. While Raziel may be able to uncover facts about you, anything related to your deepest secrets or your true identity will be obscured. I've made sure that Raziel's information about you is always technically right, but never the full truth. It will only present partial information, enough to mislead without exposing everything. Rimuru relaxed slightly at Ciel's reassurance. Still, the fact that Nia had such a powerful tool at her disposal wasn't something to be taken lightly. Before Rimuru could ask more, Nia's expression suddenly shifted. The playful, knowing smirk disappeared, replaced by a neutral look as her astral dress shimmered and vanished, leaving her back in her regular clothes. Rimuru's eyes flicked over to see Shithu walking toward them, a bowl of rice porridge in his hands. "Here you go. I made sure to get something you'd like," Shithu said cheerfully as he handed the bowl to Nia, completely oblivious to the tense conversation that had just taken place. Nia's eyes lit up, her earlier demeanor now replaced with a simple, innocent smile. "Thanks, Shonen," she said with enthusiasm, digging into the meal without hesitation. As Rimuru watched, Nia subtly glanced her way, the look in her eyes silently asking Rimuru to keep quiet about their earlier exchange. Rimuru caught the signal and nodded slightly, deciding to let it go, for now. With Shithu there, it wasn't the time to push further. Shithu paused as Nia devoured the rice porridge that Shithu had made for her, tears of joy streamed down her face, clearly showing just how much she was enjoying the meal. Shithu sat across from her, watching with a mix of amusement and concern. This is amazing," Nia exclaimed between bites, her eyes sparkling. "What is this? It's so yummy, I haven't had something this good in forever." Shithu raised an eyebrow at her. "How have you been living? There's nothing but alcohol in your fridge." His tone was half scolding, half baffled. Nia, still shoveling food into her mouth, looked up sheepishly. "Oh, I haven't had a proper warm meal in, like, a week." She said it so casually that it made Shithu's jaw drop. "A week? You can't live off alcohol." Shithu stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. "We'll head back home after I clean up." He motioned toward the kitchen. Nia, however, wasn't done with him yet. In an instant, she wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, stopping him in his tracks. Now, wait a minute, Shonen." Her tone shifted to something more playful. "Are you interested in a part-time job?" Shithu blinked, confused by the sudden change of topic. "What do you mean?" he asked. The next thing he knew, he found himself sitting at a small table, surrounded by sheets of paper, ink, and various manga drawing tools. Nia had somehow roped him into helping with her manga, Silver Bullet, and now he was stuck doing inking work. "How did this even happen?" Shithu muttered under his breath, glancing down at the page he was working on. He was reluctantly filling in the ink on one of Nia's panels, feeling completely out of his element. Rimuru, seated beside him, looked equally bewildered. "Why am I doing this too?" she asked, her expression somewhere between resignation and confusion. Inking manga was certainly not what she'd expected when they left Fraxinus. Nia offered a sheepish smile, clearly aware of the chaos she had caused. "I'm really sorry about this, guys. I usually don't hire assistants, but I'm way behind on this deadline, and I need all the help I can get." She handed Rimuru another sheet. "Don't worry, just ink whatever you can. I'll fix it up later if needed. I just need to get the basics done, no matter how it looks." Rimuru stared at the page in front of her, holding the pen with a lot more hesitation than usual. "I guess I can try," she muttered, not sounding very confident at all. Meanwhile, Shithu, who had been diligently working on his inking, finally noticed something odd. He glanced up at Nia, narrowing his eyes at her outfit. "What's with the outfit?" he asked, gesturing toward her rather revealing maid costume. Nia beamed, seemingly delighted by his attention. She twirled around, showing off her frilly made crop top, mob cap, and skirt. "Oh, I bought it as reference material for my manga a while back. It's fan service for you, Shonen, my most loyal helper." She struck a playful pose, her eyes gleaming. Mischievously, Shithu sighed, rubbing his temple. "Yeah, sure," he replied, clearly unimpressed. He was already used to Nia's antics at this point. He held up a finished page of manga. "Here, is this okay?" Nia paused for a long moment, staring at the page in silence. Shithu raised an eyebrow, unsure if she'd even heard him. But then, she broke the silence with a delighted laugh. "Wow, you're really good at this, seriously, Shonen, you've got talent." She took the page from him, her eyes sparkling with genuine admiration. Thanks, I guess," Shithu muttered, feeling a bit awkward. He wasn't used to being praised for something like this. The hours blurred together as Shithu, Rimuru, and Nia worked diligently, bringing Silver Bullet closer to completion. It was an unusual situation. One Shidu had never imagined he'd find himself in, but somehow, they had fallen into a steady rhythm. Each of them focused intently on their tasks, with Shidu and Rimuru doing their best to assist Nia in meeting her looming deadline. By the time the evening sun cast a golden hue across the room, they had managed to finish a significant portion of the chapter. Shidu sat back in his chair and stretched, feeling the soreness in his muscles from hunching over the work for so long. Finally, it's done, Nia exclaimed, releasing a deep, exhausted sigh. Her shoulders slumped as she basked in the relief of having completed such an intense workload. Shidu let out a similar sigh, wiping a bit of sweat from his brow. I haven't done something this intense in a long time. He massaged the back of his neck, feeling the tension ease slightly. You two really helped me out, Nia said gratefully, her gaze shifting to Rimuru, who was sitting quietly, equally drained from the day's work. Was that really your first time inking? Nia asked Rimuru, clearly impressed. You caught on so fast. I'd have thought you were a pro. Rimuru gave a modest nod, her expression calm but clearly appreciative of the compliment. I just followed what you showed me, she replied simply, though her eyes hinted at the exhaustion she was trying to suppress. Well, either way, you both saved me, Nia said, beaming. Then, in her usual playful manner, she turned toward Shidu with a grin. Here's your pay, Shonen. Before Shidu could react, Nia pulled a slip of paper from between her breasts, presenting it to him in the most exaggerated way possible. Shidu's face turned red almost instantly. What are you doing? Shidu stammered, completely taken aback by the gesture. His eyes darted around, unsure of where to focus, his blush deepening. Nia, enjoying his reaction far too much, giggled and gave a playful jiggle of her body, causing her small chest to bounce slightly. Come on, she teased, her tone light and mischievous. Take it, hooray! But before Shidu could muster a response, the slip of paper slipped from Nia's grasp and fell to the floor. Her breasts, clearly not large enough to hold it securely, failed to keep the paper in place. There was a long, awkward silence as all three of them stared at the paper lying on the ground. Nia, her face suddenly falling into despair, dropped to her knees and began to cry dramatically. Is it a sin to have tiny boobs? She wailed, her voice filled with exaggerated anguish as tears streamed down her face. Shidu, still blushing from the whole ordeal, rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. We're really going to head home now. You don't need to pay me, he said, trying to defuse the situation. After all, this entire experience had been more than enough payment in its own strange way. I've gained some valuable experience, he added, trying to offer some reassurance. Let's go, Rimmer, Shidu began, but before he could finish, Nia suddenly leapt at him, wrapping her arms around him from behind, halting him in his tracks. Wait, Nia said, her tone completely shifting from her previous dramatic despair. In an instant, the tears vanished, and her usual playful demeanor returned as she clung to him. Shidu blinked in confusion, barely able to keep up with her mood swings. Huh? He muttered, looking down at her. Nia grinned mischievously, her voice dripping with teasing charm. I can't just let you leave like this, Shonen. I feel too guilty. She looked up at him with a playful gleam in her eyes. How about we do this instead? I'll make it up to you by going on a date with you next Saturday. Shidu's eyes widened, and Rimuru, who had been watching silently, also raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. A date, Shido repeated, stunned by the sudden suggestion. Yep, Nia said, her smile widening. We'll go to Akihabara. I haven't gone shopping there in ages, and I could really use a break. What do you say? Shido, still processing everything, crossed his arms and gave her a skeptical look. You just want me to carry your shopping bags, don't you? He asked, seeing right through her. Nia's eyes widened in mock surprise, though her smile betrayed her. How did you know? She asked, feigning innocence, though she quickly gave up the act and laughed. Okay, you got me. Shido shook his head. I'm sorry, Nia, but you should really ask someone else for that. Don't you have friends who could go with you? At that, Nia's playful expression faltered for a moment. Her eyes softened, and for the briefest of moments, she looked genuinely sad. Friends, huh? She murmured, her voice quieter than before. Well, I don't really have any. The sudden shift in her tone caught Shido off guard. He looked at her, surprised by the seriousness in her voice. Nia? He asked, unsure of what to say. But before he could dwell on it, Nia's expression shifted again. She smiled, though this time it was a little more solemn. Are you really sure about this? She asked, her voice steady, yet something in her tone made Shido feel like the mood had suddenly changed. Before he could respond, Nia's body began to glow, a soft blue aura surrounding her as her form started to transform. Yod. Her casual clothes melted away, replaced by the ethereal, intricate fabric of her astral dress, shimmering in the fading light of the evening. Shido's eyes widened in shock. Nia, he breathed, his mind racing to process the sudden change. Rimuru, however, remained completely unfazed, almost as if she had expected this all along. With a soft smile, Nia looked at Shido, her eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and something deeper. Isn't it your job to make spirits fall for you, Itsuka Shido-kun? She asked, her voice teasing but laced with a subtle challenge. End. Chapter 28.